Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's live lesson. I hope you all are doing amazing. Today, we are going to start preparing for exams. How are we going to do that? We are going to look at a few progression tests for Foundation 1, just for us to get an idea of how the exams work, how we should think, and how we should answer them. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right in. We're going to start with this test just to give us a feel of what an exam looks like and just for us to prepare properly. Okay, so let's quickly read through the instructions, just see what's going on here, just to get the details right. So we can see that this should take us a total of 55 minutes. Okay, great. So we can gauge how long we should spend on each question, just to make sure that we don't run out of time. Okay, so the total amount of marks is 45. That's also good to know, and let's jump right in. So we're going to start this paper. So let's start with the first question. Right, so the temperature in Stockholm is at 6 o'clock is minus 3 degrees Celsius. Okay, at 12 o'clock, the temperature has risen by 5 degrees. Okay, so that means we have to add 5 degrees to negative 3 degrees to get correct temperature. Okay, so let me just quickly go back there. Right, so let's quickly do that. So I'm going to say we're going from negative 3 degrees Celsius, and we are adding 5 degrees Celsius. So this will then just be, so minus 3 plus 5 is equal to a positive 2 degrees Celsius. Not necessary to write this, but just to show our work. Okay, so that means that our answer is just 2 degrees Celsius. Okay, one more for us. Next one, calculate 15 squared. Okay, so if you do not know what 15 squared is, you can just use multiplication to calculate it. But as we know that 15 squared is equal to 225, we can just give the answer. Okay, so 225. So I want you guys to also just keep an eye on the mark allocation. We see that this is just 1 mark. So that means that we can just give an answer if we know what the final answer is. If this was, let's say this was 2 marks, then we know that we have to give more work to be able to get all of the marks. So then we had to show 15 times 15, and we could do just normal multiplication. Okay, but in this case, not necessary. It only counts 1 mark, so it's a very simple one, which all of you can do. Okay, square root of 81. All of us knows that the square root of 81 is equal to 9. Okay, and why is that? Because 9 times 9 is equal to 81. Remember, the square root is just number multiplied by itself. That gives me 81. Okay, so we're great. We have 1 mark there. So next one, write the missing numbers. So 17.26 times 1,000. Now we have to be careful. What do we do when we multiply by something with a few zeros? Okay, so if we multiply it, we know that we are basically going to shift this decimal point to the right. Okay, so the 17.26, we know that the decimal point will be shifted 3 times to the right. Okay, so what we can do is we can write the original number, 17.26, and we can see that this decimal point will move 1, 2, 3 spaces to the right. Okay, so this is our final answer. So we have 17.260. I'll go ahead and just move that over there. So that is my final answer. Okay, another mark for us. Next one, 3.8 divided by a certain number gives me 0.038. Okay, so we have to be careful. So we are going to divide by something, and we have to get the answer 0.038. That means that we have to look at how many times the decimal point has now moved. So from 3.8, okay, let me just quickly do this. So from 3.8, we have to go to 0.038. Okay, so how many times did the decimal point move? So we went 1, 2, okay. So we moved 2 to the right. Okay, what exactly does this mean? This means that we are dividing by 100. Okay, so this decimal point moved 2 to the left, and we are dividing by 100. Okay, so easy stuff. Divide by 100. All right, next one, question 4. So Kieran picks bead out of a bag without looking. He records the color and replaces the bead. Kieran does this 50 times, and he picks out a red bead 15 times out of 50. Okay, so this is a probability question. So we have to estimate probability. This word is very important. We are not calculating theoretical probability, but we are estimating it, or we are getting our experimental probability. So if we think back to experimental probability, that is just our relative frequency. And what is relative frequency? That is just equal to the frequency of the event over the total frequency, so the total amount of times that we did this. Okay, so the total frequency, and this is equal to 15 over 50. So what is 15 over 50? We have to simplify. So if we simplify it, we can just divide by 5. We have 3 over 10, or this is also equal to 0.3. So this would be my experimental probability, or my estimation of the probability. Okay, great stuff. So there we have it. Our answer is 0.3. Right, moving on. So write 27 over 4 as a mixed number. Okay, so this is an easy question. All of you know how to do that. The first thing that we have to do is see how many times 4 can go into 27. Okay, so we all know that 4 times 7 is equal to 28. Okay, so we know that. So 4 times 7 is equal to, so 7, 14, 21, 28. Okay, so that means that 4 goes into 27 a certain amount of time. So it's not 7. So let's quickly try 6. So if we say that it goes into 27 6 times, we have to see what is left. So 6 times 4 is equal to 24. So what is left is 3/4. So there is my mixed number. So our improper fraction, we see how many times the 4 goes into 27. So that's just 6 times. And what is left is our 3. Okay, so an easy fraction question. So the answer is just 6 3/4. Okay, and just very important to remember, a lot of people get confused between 6 times 3 over 4 and 6 3/4. Okay, so these are not the same things, so just be very careful with that. Right, there we have it. Next one. So write 3. So now we have a mixed number. Now we have to write 3 4/5 as an improper fraction. So how do we do that? Now we have to think back to the inverse L method. How does the inverse L method work? Remember, we multiply in this direction, and then we add in this direction. So this one, we're going to say 3 times 5 plus 4 over 5. And we can actually write this down as being 3 times 5, and then we add 4 over 5. Okay, just remember that the 3 times 5, my order of operations, is done first. So this is just equal to 19 over 5. Okay, and there's my final answer, 19 over 5. Great stuff. Moving on. So question 6. A book costs $15 in a shop. If it is bought on the internet, it costs 80% of this amount. How much does the book cost if it is bought on internet? Okay, so 2 ways that we can do this. We can calculate the discount by saying, okay, great. So if it costs 80% of my original amount, that means that I'm getting 20% off. Or this one is very easy. We can just say, what is 80% of 15? Okay, so how do we calculate that? Let's see. All we have to do is we have to get 8 over 10 times 15. So how do we get that? Okay, so we just multiply 8 times 15 divided by 10. Okay, so what will our answer be? Let's see. So we have this is equal to 12. Okay, so this is $12. Very simple stuff. Remember that if we get percentages, this 1 and the 0, 0. So we have a 1 and a 0 on the side. That just goes in my denominator and it becomes 80 over 100. And you multiply it with the quantity you are trying to get the percentage of. Okay, so this is $12. Okay, and we should also see if we can simplify it and not just try to calculate it in our head. Very important. Right, moving on. Question 7. So look at the shape drawn on the grid. Reflect this shape in the line y is equal to x. Okay, so they've already given us the line of reflection, which is now y is equal to x. And we need to reflect the shape around that line. Now remember, with reflections, we just basically want to create a mirror image of this shape. Okay. And the distance between, so the distance between our shapes, vertices, okay, so the distance between there and there, has to be exactly the same as the distance between my new position and my reflection line. So we know that our first point will just be right there. Okay, so where will the next point be? So the same thing. We can think of this vertice and go directly to my line of reflection and see that this distance has to be the same to a new point. Okay, so here's my new point. And now we do the same for the rest of the vertices. So until you can see the reflection of the shape around this line, you can get the distance between the vertices. So if we go from this vertice to my line of reflection, go all the way to my new point. Okay, so there we have it. Here's our new point. And now we can just go ahead and draw the rest of this shape. So let's connect those lines. Okay, I'm not using a ruler right now. So we go 2 in that direction, and we can just move the rest. Okay, so not 2, we are going 3 in this direction. 1, 2, 3, and 1 in this direction. And there we have it. There's our reflected shape. And we can now see that this is a perfect mirror image. Okay, so this is symmetrical around the line y is equal to x. Okay, so I should have used a ruler for that one, but you guys get the idea. A very easy question. Next one, look at the diagram. Work out the value of a. Okay, so what does this question tell us? So we have a straight line. Okay, so we have a straight line, and we know that we are going to use angle facts. Okay, so which angle facts are we going to use in this question? So we have a few bits of information. We know that this angle is 90 degrees. We know that this is 33. And we know that the angles on a straight line add up to 180. So what we can do is we can say, we know that 90 degrees plus a plus 33 degrees has to give us 180 degrees. Okay, and what is my reasoning behind this? My reasoning is just angles on a straight line. Okay, so always think of your reasoning behind it, angles on a straight line. Okay, so how do we do this now? So we can say that A is therefore just equal to 180 minus 90 minus 33. So what is this equal to? This will just be equal to 90. And then 90 minus 33 is equal to 57. So there we have it. Now the final answer is 57 degrees. Okay. So there we have it. A is equal to 57. So another quick way that we could have done it is we could have just seen that if this is perpendicular, then that means that the other side will also have to be perpendicular. And if that is the fact, then A is just equal to 90 minus 33. So we could have done that as well. We could have seen that if this is 90, then we can say 90 minus 33, and this is equal to 57. So just a quick way that we could have done that. Moving on to question 9. So calculate 34.2 divided by 6. Okay, so here we just have division where we have a decimal point. Okay, so nothing is simpler than this. We could have said, okay, so we have 34.2 divided by 6. Okay, how do we do this? So this is exactly the same as saying that we have 342 divided by 60. Okay, so just to make it a bit simpler, we could have done that, but all of you know how to divide by something with a decimal. So we can use long division if you want, or just short division, but the answer to 34.2 divided by 6 is just equal to, okay, so we have 5.7. Okay, so remember to look at how to divide if you have a decimal point. Okay, so we can just divide as normal and just replace the decimal point afterwards. Okay, so there we have it, 5.7. Next question, question 10. So ABCD is a parallelogram. Calculate the value of x. Okay, so now we have to think about the facts of a parallelogram. We have to be very careful. So we know that AB is parallel to DC. So we have to think back to my angle facts again. So we know that these co-interior angles, they have to add up to 180 degrees. So we can say that x plus 110 is equal to 180. So that means that x is just equal to 180 minus 110. This is equal to 70 degrees. Okay, and we could have seen this very easily. This x has to be equal to 70 degrees for this total to be equal to 180. Okay, so the value of x is just 70 degrees. Great stuff. That was an easy one. Let's move on. Okay, so Carl measures the 4 angles of a quadrilateral. Okay, so Faye says he made a mistake in measuring the angles. Is Faye correct? Okay, so if we think of a quadrilateral, remember a quadrilateral is just shaped with 4 vertices, so like this, any quadrilateral. And the sum of these angles have to be equal to 316. Okay, so that's one of the facts of a quadrilateral that we need to know. Okay, so this is question 10. So if all of these angles add up to 360, then we know that Carl is correct. Let's first see what these angles add up to. Okay, so 130 plus 65 plus 120 plus 55. So let's see, I'm just using a calculator to be a bit quicker. 120 plus 55. So this is equal to 370. Okay, so is not correct. He made a mistake. Okay, so is Faye correct in saying that he has made a mistake? Yes, she is correct in saying that he made a mistake. And what is our reason? Now we have to explain to them that angles in a quadrilateral, so I'm just going to say angles in a quad, add up to 360 degrees. I'm just giving them rule. Okay, it's great stuff. There we have it. We have our mark. Okay, next question. This next one is very simple. So question 11, table shows the highest daily temperatures in London and in Sydney during a week in March. What is the range of temperatures in London? Okay, so what is the range? We basically take our maximum and we minus the minimum value from the maximum. Okay, remember that my range is max minus minimum. Okay, so what would that be? So we can take 24 and we subtract 20. And this answer gives us, oh, okay, wait, we are doing London. Okay, so let's see, we have to say our maximum temperature is 11 minus 6, so this is equal to 5 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that is our temperature range. Next question, what is the median temperature in Sydney? So how do we get the median? First, we have to write everything from smallest to biggest. Okay, so we have to write all of these values down to get the median. So remember, the median is just the temperature that is smack dab in the middle. So if we take, let's start with 19. If we say 19, okay, 19 is the only one, so we can go 19 and 20 Do we have another 20? Yes, so we have two 20s, and we have a 21. And then after 21, we have a 22, we have a 23, and a 24. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, great, 7 days. So what is the median? The median is the value that is smack dab in the middle. And we can also calculate the position of this median by just dividing the total by 2 to get the position. So this median temperature is just equal to 21 degrees Celsius. Okay, so remember to write it in ascending order and then just get the middle value to get the median. Okay, there we go, 21 degrees. Next one, so make 2 comments comparing the temperatures in London and Sydney during this week. Okay, so the one thing immediately that we can immediately see is that on average, Sydney is definitely hotter than London. But we have to remember to mention on average. So on average, Sydney is hotter. Okay, so we have higher temperatures in Sydney. On average, Sydney is hotter. Okay, so what else can we see of this? So we can maybe say that the range of temperatures, so we know that the range of temperatures in London is just 5 degrees Celsius. It ranges from 6 to 11 degrees Celsius. Then Sydney, it ranges from 20 to 24. So we can say that. Okay, let me just move up. So we can say that London has a greater range. Okay, so there we have it. There we have our 2 reasons. Remember, we have to talk in the correct terms. We can't just say that Sydney is hotter and maybe London has a greater range. We have to be very specific when we answer. Okay, so there we have it. We have our 2 marks. Next question. So write brackets in the calculation to make it correct. This one is very simple. We just have to look at our order of operations and what we have to do for this to make sense. Okay, so we can immediately see that we can't just leave it as is because 7 divided by 3, that's going to give us a weird answer. Okay, so we have to immediately see that. Okay, let me just quickly erase that. That 18 plus 7 is equal to 25. Okay, so this gives me a value of 25. And this divided by 3 plus 5, which is equal to 5, gives me 5. Okay, so they are my brackets. Next one, a furniture manufacturer needs 12 screws when making a table. It's a ring around the formula that gives the total number of screws Y needed to make X amount of tables. Okay, so 12 screws per table, and we want to know what gives me an output. Okay, what gives me an output if I have an input, the number of tables? Okay, so if we need 12 screws, we can just say 12 times X gives me the total amount of screws that we need. So here is my correct answer. Y is equal to 12X. Okay, and we can maybe test this. Let's say that we had 2 tables. So if we have 2 tables, so 4X is equal to 2, we have Y is equal to 12 times 2, which gives me 24. So we need 24 screws to make 2 tables, and that makes sense. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Use the formula to calculate the number of screws needed for 20 tables. Okay, see, exactly. Now we know that Y is equal to 12X, so we can now say for X is equal to 20. Now this will be my value for X. So for X is equal to 20, we have Y is equal to 12 times 20. And this is just equal to, so let's see, what is 12 times 2 is 24. Add a 0, and we have 240. Okay, so 240 screws. There we have it. Okay, next question. The table shows some information about triangles A, B, C, and D. Okay, so we just basically have to think back to the different types of triangles. Okay, so we did this work very briefly. So let's just go through this and see if we can figure it out. So let's look at triangle B. So for triangle B, we have an angle, which is 50 degrees, and then 80 degrees, and then 50 degrees again. Okay, so this immediately tells me that we have a triangle like this, and we have the same angles. And what does that tell us? That tells us that we have an isosceles triangle. Is this triangle right angled? No, we don't have a 90 degrees angle. Okay, and is it scalene? No, it is not, because a scalene triangle has to have 3 different lengths or 3 different angles. And in this case, it does not. So it's not scalene. Okay, next question. So again, now we have 2 of the same angles. So we know that it will again look something like this. So we know that it's an isosceles, 2 of the same angles. Okay, so opposite angles equal sides. And then is it a right angle triangle? Definitely. We have a right angle triangle, so it is right angled. Is it scalene? No, it is not. We don't have 3 different angles, which means that we don't have 3 different sides. Okay, for the next question, so 40, 60, and 80. Okay, so we now know that this is scalene. We have 3 different angles. Okay, I just made these shapes to show us that it's different. Okay, so 3 different angles, which means that it is scalene. Is it right angled? Definitely not. Is it an isosceles? Definitely not. Okay, so some 2 marks there for us. Next question. Ali has some sweets. He gives an 1/8 of them to Susie and a 1/4 of them to Tom. What fraction of the sweets does Ali have left? Okay, so they don't give me the amount that Ali has. They just want to know the fraction that he has left. So what we have to do is we have to add an 1/8 and a 1/4. So he gives an 1/8 and a 1/4 of the sweets away. And this just gives me, so now we have to add these 2 fractions. Okay, so we can multiply by 2 at the top and multiply by 2 at the bottom if my denominator is the same. So this gives me 1 plus 2 over 8. Okay, so that means that he gives away 3/8 of his sweets. Okay, which makes sense. So now we have to see how much he has left. So we can just say that is equal to 1 minus 3 over 8. Okay, and this is just equal to 8 over 8 minus 3 over 8. Remember that if we have the number 1, we can just substitute that with the denominator of this over itself. So that's just 8 over 8 minus 3 over 8, and this is equal to, okay, I'm running out of space here, but let's just write it down. So it's 5 over 8. Right, easy stuff. What is left? Just add these 2 together and subtract it from 1. Okay, great, moving on. So the table shows some information about 3D shapes. Okay, so here's where the study work comes in. Remember that we have to study the terms as well. We have to study our shapes. Okay, so let's look at the first one. So a square-based pyramid. Okay, so we have a pyramid. I'm not going to draw it right now. We know that we have 5 faces. Okay, so 1 at the bottom, 4 at the sides, and we know that it comes together at the top. And number of vertices is 5. So how many edges does a square-based pyramid have? So it has 8 edges. This is either study work, or you can draw the shape somewhere on a piece of paper and see if you can count it. Okay, then the next one. So the number of faces, you have 6 faces. Okay, so this immediately lets me think of a cuboid, or just a cube. We have 6 faces, we have 8 vertices, and we have 12 edges. Okay, so this is an easy one. This is just a cube. So it's either a cube, we can also say it's a prism, cube, or a cuboid. Okay, next one, a triangular prism. Okay, remember that a triangular prism, so we have a shape that has, so let me draw it, a triangle as a base or as a face, and then this extends like that, and we have another triangle there at the back. Okay, so we can kind of see this as a roof of a house. Okay, so all of us know what a triangular prism is, and we know that this has 6 vertices. So 1, 2, 3, and 3 at the back. 6 vertices. Great stuff. 2 marks. Moving on. Okay, draw lines to join the calculations that have the same answer. Now, I would suggest with these types of questions to get answers of all of these. So 1/4 of 28, half of 20, 2/3 of 12. So we can get answers of all of them and then see where they match. Okay, so I'll leave this one to you guys. I'm going to end the lesson for now. Next week, we'll finish up with this and then start looking at the second paper. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and we will see you next week when we do paper 2. Have an amazing day and see you next time.